I stood outside my father's mansion, clutching an envelope that would destroy everything he'd built. The party was in full swing, champagne flowing, laughter echoing through the marble halls, but they had no idea what was coming. You see, 3 days ago, I received an invitation to my own father's 70th birthday party. Well, not exactly an invitation, more like a restriction. The card read, "Heirs only, no dead ends, don't bring your daughter." My daughter, my beautiful, brilliant 8-year-old Sophie, deemed a dead end because she'd never carry on the family name. But here's what my father didn't know. I had brought something far more valuable than my daughter tonight. I'd brought the truth, and it was about to blow his perfect world apart. If you love stories of epic revenge and justice served cold, you're in the right place. Hit that like button and subscribe to True Revenge Tales for more incredible true stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Miranda Chen, and for 32 years, I believe my father loved me unconditionally. But that illusion shattered the moment I opened a cream-colored envelope with gold embossing that arrived on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Robert Chen, my father, the real estate mogul, the philanthropist, the man the world saw as a self-made billionaire, who climbed from nothing to build an empire worth billions, had always been more than his public persona to me. He was Dad, the man who patiently taught me to ride a bike on summer evenings, running behind me with his hands on the seat until I found my balance, who attended every single school play even when business called him away, sitting in the front row with flowers, who actually cried at my wedding when he walked me down the aisle, whispering that I would always be his little girl. I smiled as I slid my finger under the envelope's seal, already mentally planning what my 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, would wear to her beloved grandfather's 70th birthday celebration, picturing her excitement, because she absolutely adored him and he seemed to feel the same way about her, always sneaking her extra cookies and letting her play in his office. Then I read the words printed in elegant script, and my entire world tilted sideways. Robert Chen cordially invites his heirs to celebrate his 70th birthday. This is a family gathering for bloodline legacy planning. Heirs only, no dead ends. Please do not bring daughters as they will not inherit. I read it once, certain I'd misunderstood, then twice, my hands beginning to tremble. Then a third time as the full weight of those words crashed over me like a wave of ice water. My daughter, my brilliant, kind, beautiful Sophie, who still believed her grandfather hung the moon, had just been labeled a dead end because she would never carry on the Chen family name, because she was born female, because in my father's eyes, she didn't count as a real heir, didn't count as worthy of his legacy, didn't count as fully human in the dynasty he was building. My phone rang, jarring me from my spiraling thoughts, and my brother David's voice came through tight and strained when I answered. "Did you get the invitation?" he asked, and I could hear the anger and helplessness battling in his tone. Yes, David, what is this?" I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange and distant even to my own ears. "It's exactly what it looks like, Miranda. Dad's making his succession plan official. Only male heirs get anything. Your daughter doesn't count because she'll marry and take another name. You don't count because..." And I finished his sentence in a whisper that felt like swallowing glass. "Because I already took another name when I married." The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I'd never wanted to see, revealing a truth about my father I'd spent 3 decades blind to. "David, this is insane. This is 2024, not 1824, I protested, but even as I said it, I knew my father operated by his own rules, in his own universe where his word was law and his money was power. "I know," David sighed heavily. "I already told him I think it's wrong, that it's medieval and sexist and cruel. He said it's his money and he'll do what he wants with it, that I don't understand the importance of preserving the family line properly." There was a pause, and I could feel something worse coming, something that made my brother hesitate to speak. "Miranda, there's more. He's not just cutting out Sophie. He's cutting you out too. Everything, the company, the properties, the investments, all of it goes to me and my sons. You get nothing." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, and I had to sit down as the room spun. "But I've worked for the company for 10 years. I built the entire West Coast division from the ground up. I brought in over $200 million in revenue last year alone." The protest burst from me, desperate, needing him to acknowledge the absurdity. "He says you did it as an employee, not as an heir. That you were compensated with your salary. Miranda, I'm sorry. I really am. I'm going to fight this, talk to lawyers, see if there's any way to contest it. But you know how he is once he makes up his mind. He's like a force of nature, immovable and relentless. After we hung up, I sat in my home office in complete silence, staring at that invitation as afternoon light slanted through the windows, watching dust motes dance in the air while my entire understanding of my life crumbled around me. All those years, all that love I thought was unconditional, all those moments I'd treasured, they were conditional after all. Based on something I could never change, something that had been decided before I took my first breath. My gender. That night, Sophie found me crying at my desk, her small face creased with concern that no 8-year-old should have to feel for her mother. "Mommy, why are you sad?" she asked, climbing into my lap like she used to when she was smaller, and I pulled her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her solid warmth against me. "Remember how we were going to see Grandpa for his birthday party?" I managed to say, "Yes."
"I made him a card with glitter and everything.
"I drew our whole family." Her eyes lit up with that pure childhood enthusiasm that made the coming words even harder to say. "Well, sweetheart, Grandpa says you can't come to this party." I watched her face fall, watched confusion and hurt flash across her features, and felt something inside me crack wide open. "Why not? Did I do something wrong? I can make a better card if he didn't like it," she offered, so ready to blame herself. "To try harder, to be worthy. How do you explain to an 8-year-old girl that her grandfather doesn't value her existence? That he's deemed her worthless because she was born female? That in his eyes she's a dead end rather than a precious human being? No, baby, you did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. You're perfect exactly as you are," I told her fiercely, holding her tighter. But as I rocked her and felt her small disappointment, something inside me hardened into steel, into determination, into a cold rage that burned hotter than any fire. My father wanted heirs, wanted legacy, wanted control over bloodlines and futures and who mattered in his empire. Fine. He would get exactly what he asked for, just not in the way he expected. I just needed to make one phone call first, to someone I'd sworn never to contact again. Someone whose very existence would shatter everything my father had built his life upon. My mother, the woman my father had erased from our family history 30 years ago. The ghost he'd buried so deep he thought she'd never resurface to haunt him. But the dead, I was about to discover, have a way of coming back when the living need them most. My mother's name was Katherine Park, though I'd only learned that devastating truth 5 years ago when I hired a private investigator to dig into questions that had haunted me since childhood. Questions my father always deflected with tears and trembling hands. Growing up, my father told us she died when David and I were toddlers, barely old enough to remember her touch or her voice, victims of a tragic car accident that took her from us too soon, leaving us motherless and him a grieving widower who bravely soldiered on alone. It was a lie, every single word of it. A fabrication so complete and so cruel that even now, years after discovering the truth, it still takes my breath away. I discovered the real story by accident when I was 27, applying for an enhanced security clearance required for a major international business deal, never expecting that routine background check to detonate a bomb in my carefully constructed understanding of my family. The background check flagged something odd, something that didn't match the official story. Records showing my mother had been alive and living in Seattle until 2019, working as a bookkeeper, paying taxes, existing in the world while I'd spent decades mourning a ghost. The investigator I hired, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah, who'd seen every kind of family secret, found my mother's obituary. Within a week, Katherine Park, age 68, passed away peacefully, survived by her sister Jean Park. With no mention of children, no mention of a husband named Robert Chen, no mention of the family she'd been forced to abandon. I contacted Aunt Jean, a woman whose existence I'd never even suspected, and she was suspicious at first, her voice tight with decades of protective anger when I called. But when I sent her my photo, she broke down crying so hard I could barely understand her words. "You look just like Katie," she sobbed over the phone, her grief fresh despite the years. "Oh God, you look just like her. The same eyes, the same smile, like she's come back to me." Jean told me everything over coffee at a small diner in Seattle, her hands shaking as she slid a worn photo album across the table, showing me pictures of my mother, vibrant, laughing, alive long after she supposedly died, living a half-life without her children, watching us from afar like a ghost at the window of her own existence. "Your father married my sister when they were both nobodies," Jean explained, her voice bitter with old anger and grief. "Katie worked 3 jobs simultaneously, waitressing at night, cleaning offices in the early morning, doing bookkeeping on weekends. all to put Robert through business school because she believed in him, believed in his dreams, sacrificed her own education and her own body to exhaustion for his future. She pulled out more photos, documents, proof of a woman I'd never known. She was the one with the real business sense, the vision, the instinct for deals. Every early deal he made, every property he acquired in those crucial first years, she was the brains behind it. Staying up until 3 a.m. running numbers, researching properties, creating the business model he still uses today. I stared at those documents, seeing my mother's handwriting, her signature, her brilliance captured in fading ink. Then why did he erase her? Why tell us she was dead? The question came out as a whisper, though I already knew the answer would break something inside me. Because once he started making real money, serious money, the kind that opens doors to power, he wanted to climb the social ladder. And Katie was the wrong kind of wife for that world, Jean said, her eyes hardening with a rage that had been simmering for 3 decades. Katie was Korean American, working class, didn't have the right connections or the right pedigree for the country clubs and boardrooms where real power lived. Robert met some society woman at a gala, Vivian Worthington. Old money, old name, the kind of bloodline that mattered to men like him. My blood ran cold as understanding crashed over me. Vivian? But she's the woman he introduced as his second wife. The woman who raised us after Mom supposedly died. Yes, Jean confirmed, her voice sharp as broken glass. But she was actually his mistress first, his ticket to high society, his passport to a world where Katherine Park didn't belong. Robert divorced Katie in secret, using lawyers she couldn't afford to fight, threatened her with things I won't repeat, paid her off with money that was partly hers anyway since she'd helped build his business. Then took you kids and told Katie if she ever tried to contact you, if she ever showed her face, if she ever breathed a word of the truth, he'd make sure she went to prison for kidnapping, using false charges and bought judges. Jean's hands clenched around her coffee cup. He had lawyers, money, power, connections that reached into courtrooms and police stations. She had nothing but the truth, and the truth doesn't win against millions of dollars and ruthless ambition. She could have fought harder, gone to the media, exposed him. I protested weakly, needing to believe there had been another way. But Jean shook her head sadly. She tried, Miranda. She fought for 2 years, spending every penny she had on lawyers, who ultimately couldn't match his legal team, filing motions that were dismissed by judges who played golf with your father, until the money ran out and the fight broke her completely. Jean wiped her eyes, her grief as fresh as if Katherine had died yesterday. It destroyed her soul. She spent the rest of her life working as a bookkeeper in a small firm, living alone in a tiny apartment, looking at photos of the children she lost, cutting out newspaper clippings about your achievements, printing pictures from social media, collecting evidence of lives she could never be part of, watching you grow up through a window she could never break through. Jean pulled out a shoebox, battered and held together with tape, and inside were dozens of pictures of David and me, school. Photos she must have acquired somehow, newspaper clippings about our achievements, printouts from social media before she died, a whole secret archive of maternal love expressed through distance and silence. At the very bottom, wrapped in tissue paper like something precious and fragile, was a letter addressed to me in handwriting. I'd never seen, but somehow recognized in my bones. My dearest Miranda, if you're reading this, then you've found the truth I couldn't tell you myself. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for you. Couldn't brush your hair before school or bandage your scraped knees or tell you I loved you every single day. Not a day passed that I didn't think of you and your brother, that I didn't wonder what you were learning, who you were becoming, whether you were happy. I want you to know that everything your father built wasn't just his creation. I was there at the beginning, finding the first property on Harbor Street that became your flagship office, negotiating the first 10 deals when he was too proud to compromise, designing the business model he still uses today, the foundation of an empire built partially on my stolen labor and my erased contributions. He erased me from the story like I never existed, rewrote history to make himself the sole hero. But I existed, Miranda. I mattered. I was real, and I loved you with every breath I took until my last one. And so do you, my darling girl. Regardless of what anyone tells you, regardless of what your father's will says or doesn't say, you matter. You're valuable. You're worthy of everything this world has to offer. The letter was signed, All My Love Forever, Mom. And there was more in that box. Documents. Contracts from the early days with my mother's signature proving her involvement. Bank records showing her financial contributions to what would become Chen Properties. Proof that Katherine Park was the secret co-founder of an empire that, pretended she never existed. That was 5 years ago, and I'd kept the secret tucked away, unsure what to do with a truth that could destroy everything, telling myself it didn't matter anymore since Mom was gone and Dad had been mostly good to me. But now, holding that invitation that deemed my daughter a dead end, I finally understood that it mattered more than anything, that my mother's erasure and my daughter's dismissal were the same violence across generations. And I called Aunt Jean with a voice like steel. I need everything you have, every document, every record, every proof that my mother existed and contributed to Dad's empire, because I'm going to show the whole world who Robert Chen really is, and I'm going to make sure Katherine Park is never erased again. The night of the party, I wore red, power red, the color of celebration and revolution, the color of blood and roses, the color that commands attention in any room, and I felt like a warrior going into battle, armed not with weapons but with truth, that most dangerous weapon of all. Sophie was safe at home with my husband Tom, who'd wanted to come as backup, ready to stand beside me and face down my father. But I needed to do this alone because this was my fight. My mother's vindication, my daughter's future, a reckoning 30 years in the making. The mansion glittered with 1,000 lights as I arrived. Valets in crisp uniforms parking Bentleys and Ferraris and Maseratis. The driveway, a showcase of wealth that would have impressed anyone who didn't know the bloody foundation it was built upon. Inside, the city's elite mingled with my father's business associates. Champagne flowing like water, laughter echoing through marble halls. Everyone dressed in their finest to honor Robert Chen and witness the anointing of his male heirs, completely unaware that they were about to witness something entirely different. My brother David spotted me first, his face a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Miranda, you came," he said, approaching me quickly. "Did you think I wouldn't?" I asked, and he looked uncomfortable in his designer tux, tugging at his collar like it was choking him. Honestly, I wasn't sure. "Look, I talked to my lawyer about the situation. There might be ways to contest the will based on your contributions to the company, your years of service, the revenue you've generated, but..." I cut him off with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm not here to contest the will, David." Before he could respond, before he could ask what I meant, the lights dimmed dramatically, and my father stood at the top of the grand staircase like a king surveying his kingdom. Microphone in hand, Vivian beside him dripping in diamonds that cost more than most people's houses, more than my mother earned in her entire lifetime of scraping by. "Thank you all for coming." Robert Chen's voice boomed through the sound system, commanding and confident, the voice of a man who'd never been told no, never faced real consequences. "Tonight is about legacy, about family, about ensuring that everything I've built continues through the proper bloodline, through the heirs who will carry the Chen name forward into future generations." He went on, spinning his carefully constructed mythology, talking about his humble beginnings while conveniently leaving out the part about my mother working 3 jobs to support him, about building Chen properties from nothing while erasing Katherine's role in finding that first crucial property, about family values while having destroyed his own family without a second thought. And so, he concluded, his chest puffed with pride, "I'm proud to announce that my son, David Chen, and his 2 sons, will inherit controlling interest in Chen properties, ensuring our name, our legacy, continues untainted through the generations." That word, untainted, hung in the air like poison gas, like a slap across the face of every woman in the room, and I felt the rage that had been simmering inside me for days finally reach boiling point. Applause rippled through the crowd like a wave, polite and obligatory. While David looked absolutely miserable as he climbed the stairs to join our father, his face a mask of discomfort because he knew this was wrong, knew it was cruel, but didn't know how to stop it. This was my moment, the moment I'd been preparing for, the moment my mother never got to have. I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the marble floor, cutting through the applause. "Dad, may I say a few words?" He looked surprised but pleased, probably thinking I was going to give some gracious speech about supporting my brother, about understanding his decision, about being a good daughter who knew her place. "Of course, sweetheart," he said magnanimously, gesturing for me to join them. And I climbed those stairs feeling like I was climbing toward destiny. I took the microphone, looked out at 100 expectant faces, power brokers, socialites, business moguls, all waiting to hear what the dismissed daughter would say, and smiled. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate my father's legacy. Legacy is important, isn't it? Remembering where we come from, honoring those who helped us get here, telling the truth about how empires are really built." I paused, letting the words settle, That's why I'd like to take this moment to honor someone who's been left out of the Chen property story for far too long. Someone whose contributions have been deliberately erased. Someone who deserves to be remembered. My father's smile began to falter, uncertainty creeping into his eyes. My mother, Katherine Park Chen. The gasps that rippled through the crowd were audible. Sharp intakes of breath, shocked whispers spreading like wildfire, and I watched Vivian go pale, her hand flying to her throat. Most of you were told my mother died when I was a child. A tragic car accident that left my father a grieving widower. That's what I was told too for 32 years. But it was a lie, a complete fabrication designed to erase an inconvenient woman from an inconvenient past. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the display screen my father had set up for his presentation, and suddenly the massive screen filled with photos of my mother, young, beautiful, vibrant, standing next to my father in the early days, when they were both nobodies with everything to prove, holding baby David and me with a smile that radiated pure love. This is Katherine Park, the woman who worked 3 jobs simultaneously to put Robert Chen through business school, who sacrificed her own education and health and dreams for his ambition, the woman who found the first property Chen Properties ever acquired, that warehouse on Harbor Street that became our flagship office and launched this entire empire, the woman whose business model, whose instincts, whose genius still forms the foundation of this company today, generating billions in revenue using strategies she developed. Miranda, that's enough, my father said, his voice tight with warning, with threat. But I was far beyond caring about his warnings. The woman, I continued, my voice rising to fill the enormous room, who was divorced in secret when she became inconvenient. When my father decided to climb the social ladder and needed a more appropriate wife with the right bloodline and the right connections, the woman who was threatened, paid off with money that was partially hers anyway, and erased from her own children's lives so my father could marry into high society and pretend his past never existed. I pulled up documents on the screen, original business, contracts with Katherine's signature, bank records showing her financial contributions, property registration papers listing her as co-owner, an entire archive of proof that she had been there, that she had mattered, that she had built this empire as much as he had. Everything you see tonight, this mansion, this empire, this legacy my father is so proud of, it was built on my mother's back, on her labor, on her brilliance, on her sacrifices. And then she was thrown away like garbage when she was no longer useful, erased like she never existed, forbidden from seeing her own children under threat of legal destruction. This is slander, my father shouted, his face purple with rage, veins standing out on his forehead. Security, get her out of here! Is it slander if I have proof? I held up a thick folder, documents spilling out. Notarized contracts, court records, financial statements, witness testimonies all showing that Katherine Park was the secret co-founder of Chen Properties, that she contributed intellectually and financially to its creation, and that legally, her heirs, that's me and David, are entitled to her share of the company she built. The room erupted in chaos, whispers becoming shouts, phones coming out as people started Googling, fact-checking, posting to social media, the carefully orchestrated celebration dissolving into scandal. My father's face was purple with rage, his hands clenching and unclenching. You ungrateful, he started. But I cut him off, my voice sharp as a blade. Ungrateful? You sent me an invitation calling my daughter a dead end. You built your empire on a woman's stolen labor and then erased her from history like she never mattered. You taught me that family is everything, then showed me that to you. It's only worth something if it has a penis attached, if it carries your precious name forward. David was staring at me with tears running down his face, his whole world reshaping. Miranda. Mom was alive all this time? Until 5 years ago, I confirmed, my voice softer for him. She never stopped loving us, never stopped collecting photos and clippings, never stopped watching from afar. She just couldn't fight Dad's lawyers and money and power. I turned back to my father, holding up the final document my lawyer had prepared. You wanted heirs only at this party? Well, congratulations, you've got one. An heir to Katherine Park's legacy. An heir who won't let her mother be forgotten anymore. This is a lawsuit claiming my mother's rightful share of Chen Properties, 50% of everything acquired in the first 10 years. When she was your partner, which amounts to about 40% of current holdings, billions of dollars built on her erased contributions. You can't, he sputtered. But I was already walking down the stairs, the crowd parting before me like the Red Sea. I can and I will. Every property she found, Every deal she structured, every innovation she contributed, I'm claiming it in her name. And when I win, because I will win, Dad, the proof is overwhelming and you know it. I'm putting it in a trust for my daughter, your granddaughter, the dead end who will inherit everything you tried to keep from her. I reached the bottom of the stairs and delivered my final blow. Oh, and one more thing. I'm releasing all of this to the press tonight. Every document, every photo, every sordid detail. By morning, everyone will know the real story of Chen Properties. About Katherine Park, the woman you erased. About your treatment of your own daughter and granddaughter. About what you really value beneath all your talk of family and legacy.
You'll destroy the company!
He shouted desperately. No, Dad, I said calmly. I'll finally tell the truth about it. And what you do with that truth is entirely up to you. And I walked out of that mansion into the cool night air, into a future my mother never got to see, but had made possible through her invisible sacrifices, carrying her legacy forward into light.